Humor?
Humor?
Yeah.
Of course I do. I love humor. I love to laugh. That's one of my favorite things.
The only reason I ask is because, people, you read all articles about you, etc., they're sullen and quiet and all those type of things.
Once in a while.
What makes you laugh then?
Something funny.
Right, you got me there.
Bob Dylan is an American singer-songwriter, visual artist, and author who has been a major figure in popular culture for more than 50 years. His lyrics during this period incorporated a wide range of political, social, philosophical, and literary influences, defied pop music conventions, and appealed to the flourishing counterculture. Much of his most celebrated work dates from the 1960s, when songs such as Blowin' in the Wind, 1963, and The Times They Are A-Changin', 1964, became anthems for the civil rights movement and anti-war movement. He has sold more than 100 million records, making him one of the best-selling music artists of all time. Since 1994, Dylan has published 8 books of drawings and paintings, and his work has been exhibited in major art galleries.
So people would actually come to the house?
Mm-hmm.
And do what?
Want to discuss things with me, politics and philosophy and organic farming and things,
What did you know about organic farming?
Nothing.
Dylan built his own Malibu compound in Point Dume, Malibu, California. The Dylan Mansion, a hodgepodge of Santa Fe Spanish and Moorish appointments, including a Russian-styled copper dome crowning the tallest tower, might be the most eclectic property ever built. The designer's almost religious adherence to the aesthetics of the Spanish colonial and missionary revival movements in Southern California is his calling card. The designers and architects of the house became famous for their work on the homes of rock stars and pro athletes, including Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Bob Dylan has owned many vehicles over the years, including a 1966 Mustang convertible, a Triumph Tiger 100, a Cadillac Escalade, a Chrysler 200, and a Jaguar E-Type. Bob Dylan's net worth is $200 million.
I read somewhere that you wrote Blowin' in the Wind in 10 minutes. Is that right?
Probably.
Just like that?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
It just came.
Bob Dylan started dating his backup singer Carolyn Dennis in January 1985. They married in June 4, 1986, but later divorced in October 1992. The couple had a daughter, Desiree Gabrielle Dennis Dylan, on January 31, 1986. Sally Kirkland and Bob Dylan had a relationship in the 1970s. Sally Kirkland is an American film, television, and stage actress. She received Golden Globe and Independent Spirit Awards and was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Anna, 1987. Bob Dylan and Sarah Landis married in November 22, 1965. They later divorced on June 29, 1977. The couple had 4 children together: son Jesse Byron, born January 6, 1966, daughter Anna Leah, born July 11, 1967, son Samuel Isaac Abram, born July 30, 1968, and son Jacob Luke, born December 6, 1969. Dylan also adopted Lawendis's daughter Maria from her previous marriage. Dana Gillespie and Bob Dylan had a relationship in 1965. Dana Gillespie is an English actress, singer, and songwriter, originally performing and recording in her teens. Over the years, Gillespie has been involved in the recording of over 45 albums. and appeared in stage productions such as Jesus Christ Superstar and several films. Mavis Staples and Bob Dylan had a relationship in the 1960s. Mavis Staples is an American rhythm and blues and gospel singer, actress, and civil rights activist. She has recorded and performed with her family's band, the Staples Singers, and is also a solo artist. Famously known groupie Chris O'Dell and Bob Dylan had a relationship in the 1960s. Joan Baez and Bob Dylan had a relationship in the 1960s, and they frequently performed together. Joan Chandos Baez is an American singer, songwriter, musician, and activist. Her contemporary folk music often includes songs of protest or social justice. Baez has performed publicly for over 60 years, releasing over 30 albums. Susan Rotalo and Bob Dylan dated from 1961 to 1964. Rotalo appears alongside Dylan on the cover of his album, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. Susan Elizabeth Rotalo, known as Susie Rotalo, was an American artist. Dylan later acknowledged her strong influence in his music and art during that period. Most people know Bob Dylan as a singer and a songwriter. Some will also be aware that he is a prolific visual artist and has been exhibiting paintings for nearly 2 decades. However, even seasoned Dylan watchers have been taken by surprise with news that, at the age of 72, he unveiled a number of large-scale metal sculptures. Accompanying publicity photographs shown him using professional welding tools and wearing a protective visor. Growing up in Hibbing, Minnesota, Dylan and his family were part of the area's small, close-knit Jewish community, and in May 1954, Dylan had his bar mitzvah. Around the time of his 30th birthday in 1971, Dylan visited Israel and also met Rabbi Meir Kahan, founder of the New York-based Jewish Defense League. During the late 1970s, Dylan converted to Christianity. From January to March 1979, Dylan attended the Vineyard Bible Study classes in Rosada, California. By 1984, Dylan was distancing himself from the Born Again label. Dylan has performed many songs from his gospel albums in concert, occasionally covering traditional religious songs.
What do you hope the future promises for Bob Dylan, and equally, what do you think it promises for Robert Zimmerman?
Well, this is it. This is the future.
Bob Dylan was born Robert Allen Zimmerman on May 24, 1941 in Duluth, Minnesota, and raised in Hibbing, Minnesota. Dylan's paternal grandparents, Anna Krigus and Zygmunt Zimmerman, immigrated from Odessa in the Russian Empire to the United States following the anti-Semitic pogroms of 1905. His maternal grandparents, Florence and Ben Stone, were Lithuanian Jews who arrived in the United States in 1902. Dylan's father, Abram Zimmerman, and mother, Beatrice Beatty Stone, were part of a small, close-knit Jewish community. They lived in Duluth until Dylan was 6, when his father had polio and the family returned to his mother's hometown, Hibbing, where they lived for the rest of Dylan's childhood, and his father and paternal uncles ran a furniture and appliances store. In his early years, he listened to the radio, first to blues and country stations from Shreveport, Louisiana, and later, when he was a teenager, to rock and roll. Dylan formed several bands while attending Hibbing High School. In the Golden Chords, he performed covers of songs by Little Richard and Elvis Presley. In September 1959, Dylan moved to Minneapolis and enrolled at the University of Minnesota. His focus on rock and roll gave way to American folk music. Dylan began to perform at the 10 O'Clock Scholar, a coffee house a few blocks from campus, and became involved in the Dinkytown folk music circuit. During this period, he began introducing himself as Bob Dylan. In May 1960, Dylan dropped out of college at the end of his first year. In January 1961, he traveled to New York City to perform there and visit his musical idol Woody Guthrie, who was seriously ill with Huntington's disease in Greystone Park Psychiatric Hospital. Guthrie had been a revelation to Dylan and influenced his early performances. From February 1961, Dylan played at clubs around Greenwich Village, befriending and picking up material from folk singers there. Dylan's first album, Bob Dylan, released March 19, 1962, consisted of familiar folk, blues, and gospel with 2 original compositions. The album sold only 5,000 copies in its first year, just enough to break even. Much of his most acclaimed work was during the 1960s, though his works have spanned 5 decades. A number of Dylan's early songs, such as Blowin' in the Wind and The Times They Are a Changin', became anthems for the U.S. civil rights and anti-war movements.